Hello, welcome back to the Floating Through Film podcast. I am your host, Luke, and today we are continuing our series on the French New Wave, specifically talking about the influences on the French New Wave, especially film noir and Italian Neorealism. So I am joined here by my two co-hosts, Danny.
Hello.
And Blake.
What's up?
And, start us off, I wanted to talk about, how there's a misconception by a lot of people that the French New Wave directors, were rebelling against the American studio system, when in reality they were very much influenced by that, and they deeply admired them. So,
So what were they rebelling against then?
They were rebelling against the older French movies, the French studio
system in their own country,
instead of the American studio system in America.
Yes.
But
so how do we want to start this? Talk about maybe film noir first.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah,
because we did talk.
We
about
just
Breathless.
talked about Breathless.
Yes.
Yeah, heavily influenced by film noir.
I feel like, at least from when I think initially of the French New Wave movies, when I think about American influences, I think of film noir first, especially in the style of a lot of the films and stuff. But definitely westerns also as well. But I feel like it's film noir for me.
Yeah. I think
it's a mixture. It's a mixture for sure. But Western, or a film noir is, I feel like, more heavily influential for sure.
Like we all watched Elevator to the Gallows.
Yes.
Preparing for this series. That's definitely film noir. That's early French New Wave as well.
Yes.
So that's considered one of the first French New Wave movies.
Yeah.
And
it's still, honestly, from what I've seen, it's still one of the, I think it's my favorite film noir from the French New Wave so far. That I've seen. I think it pairs what the French New Wave is great about, like showing Paris, like just the street view of Paris with a film noir. Like it mixes those things. It's really good. And I love Miles Davis's score.
And I think
that's a big reason. But
and I think, of course, Breathless is kind of, to me, the noir, like the culmination of the inspiration from all those noirs went to Breathless. I feel like that's kind of just defining one that I can see. I mean, we talked about that last episode, but
especially definitely I've noticed this in the Godard movies I've watched, is it's not only the very best film noirs, even that some of them that I've seen, most of them that I haven't, but also a lot of the B movies they were watching. A lot of the lesser film noir movies or other genre movies they were watching. You could tell Godard is inspired by those movies, maybe just as much, because Godard, maybe, I have to only guess a lot of the B movies he was watching, because obviously I haven't seen most of them.
Yeah.
But in terms of maybe the sloppy editing or low budget look of some of Godard movies, if you watch on the surface, he's using that as an advantage,
just pointing his camera at something.
Yes. He's doing it on purpose, the choppy editing. He's actually trying to use that as part of the movie and as part of the feel of the movie.
Yeah. I think they also were really inspired by the auteur aspect of a lot of directors. Hitchcock, Wells. And there's a funny story how Truffaut was in a theater with a group of people watching an Orson Welles movie, and a rather famous person, as it's quoted, who was around 40 or 50, started criticizing Orson Welles out loud, and then Truffaut stood up and said, "Sir, if it weren't for your age, I would bash your head in."
I would bash your head.
So it just showed how much he deeply cared about, Wells and just generally the American movies of that day,
And that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of the episode, where people, when they think of maybe the French New Wave just on a surface level, they think, oh, they were these new, young, hip filmmakers that were rebelling against all the old filmmakers of the past. But really, it wasn't like that at all. Like you're saying, especially the American.
You always hear they're rebelling against the studio system, not which studio system.
Yeah. Honestly, it's the same way when people but people just are mad about Marvel dominating or Disney dominating the studio system.
Yeah.
And because of that, only certain types of movies can be made. Only movies can be made that make $100 to $200 million at the box office. Even it's a failure if you make a superhero movie that doesn't make $500 million or something. Stuff like that. And that's what they were talking about, that in their version of the time, right?
Yeah.
And this goes back to what you were saying about the authorship, in terms of they noticed, even in this American studio system, they noticed that there were authors making these movies. You know, you could tell how Howard Hawks made this movie, no matter if what studio made it, right? No matter what genre it was.
And that really brought about the how a director uses camera as a writer would use his pen. You know, to basically put their stamp on the movies. And generally, the person I think of when I think of auteur in America, I think of Orson Welles. I mean, that's like I feel like
and that's the thing, they thought of that too. They noticed that. Like, it's kind of, you know, every person getting into movies has to go through the whole Citizen Kane thing. We're like, why is this movie so good? And you over time start to realize, oh, Orson Welles. Like, when you start learning more about film history, you realize how important someone like Orson Welles was. Right.
He was just ahead of the time, honestly.
Yeah. But even then, in certain ways, he was ahead of his time. But even then, he would admit, like, was it Stagecoach? He said he watched 30 times before.
He would watch it every day, I believe, and study it.
Okay, so more than 30 times. Then.
Yeah, and like he idolized John Ford. Like,
that's what I'm saying. That's what all these French New Wave directors, they noticed too, was John Ford. Like, John Ford has that much control over his movies, even on the surface, if it just looks like a classic Western or a classic, you know, John Wayne movie.
I mean, Orson Welles literally, someone asked him his top 5 favorite directors, and he said John Ford, John Ford, John Ford, John Ford, and John Ford. Like, it's crazy.
Come on, not even one Chaplin in there?
Yeah. Like, now here's a good question: do you think they were inspired by silent movies, Ben? Like, do you think they took any inspiration?
Oh, definitely. From those? I mean, Jules and Jim has a silent movie section in it. But there's a Varda one that has one too. I just watched.
Oh, Cliff Farm 7 literally has a...
Yes, the other actors in it too.
Yeah, it's Godard and Karina.
Yes, Godard, yes, okay, yes. Yes, exactly. You know, they're openly doing that in their movies.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
That's something I wanted to mention when we talked in this part of the episode, was, so when we talk about these early influences on the French New Wave, like, what I think about the most is they realized... first of all, they realized how amazing a lot of these genres in America were, right? The Western, the comedy, the film noir.
Yeah.
Or in Italy, Italian Neorealism, right? Yeah. They realized how, not only that they were unique and special, but they also realized you could take a lot of their techniques that they were using and put them in your own movies in different story contexts.
Yeah.
Right? And even different feeling movie. Like, you can take a movie like we're going to talk about later, Bicycle Thieves. You can take the way that movie is shot, but apply it to a French Paris movie about, you know, 2 people in their 20s. Yeah. Use the same style, and you'll get a totally different kind of movie out of it, while still using the same style, right? And that's just the Italian Neorealistic part. You can mention that with any genre.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty much. And I also, like, I wanted to bring up Westerns because, like, what do you guys think? What did they take from Westerns, do you think, specifically?
I mean, honestly... The characters, for sure. They took a lot, like the leading actor, the leading man.
You know, wisecracking, you know.
Like... Yes. There are a lot of really good Westerns that have really good framing and blocking and stuff like that. And they... Honestly, I don't want to say they obviously learned from that, but I mean, they were obviously watching that and used that in their movies, because whenever people think of old Westerns, they just think of... I mean, I don't want to say boring, but I mean, they're just like... pro-American, all pro-American boring and stuff like that. But these directors were doing like interesting things in their movies, even if they aren't great movies themselves.
Yeah.
But that's why I was saying the film noir is definitely, I think, more influential to them. But I mean, film noir is also influenced by Westerns too. So
yeah, and I mean, the auteur aspect is also still prevalent in Westerns.
And that's the thing. It's the same. Definitely. They realize it's the same directors, right?
Yes.
Because me and Blake. I don't know if you've seen Red River.
No, I haven't.
Or His Girl. Have you seen His Girl Friday?
No, I haven't either.
But because we're reviewing The Big Sleep, Howard Hawks, later on in the episode, and so I kind of wanted to get at least a little feel of Howard Hawks movies. Yeah. And I watched His Girl Friday and Red River last week.
Yeah.
And just being able to see Howard Hawks in all 3 movies, even though those are vastly different genres. Yeah. You know, they require vastly different pacing and editing and all that, but you still see the kind of Howard Hawks straightforward storytelling. You know, he's not going to ever get too crazy about anything.
Straightforward storytelling. His characters are always really quick-witted.
Yes.
Honestly, his main characters, there are some slow characters in his movies all the time too. But
I mean, I feel like that was really prevalent in old-time Hollywood in general. I mean, every Hollywood movie basically.
I think it is, but the difference is that Howard Hawks is a really good writer. So
okay.
Or
like his dialogue, he had really good
writing.
Like there, like his dialogue is actually really quick and sharp. Like it's actually sharp.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially noticing that in His Girl Friday for sure.
Oh, definitely.
It's so fast paced, but almost
Big
all
Sleep
the dialogue
too,
works. Big Sleep as well. Yes. I guess we'll talk about this later for sure, but I lean more comedy than film noir. I realized from this.
I lean more
film
noir. No, but that is one of the coolest things, because what you were saying is they saw an auteur in Howard Hawks, even though he wasn't just doing one thing, and probably because he wasn't just doing one thing, they noticed that he had Howard Hawksian things that he was doing in all these different genres, because Howard Hawks did almost every genre, I think, in movies, basically. Like a lot of his movies, there's really not two alike with him.
No, it's just him, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we were going to mention this maybe at some point in this episode. The Kahiri Cinema writers, they were one of the first people to interview Howard Hawks as like some kind of serious director, especially overseas in Europe, right? And that interview, what they did with Howard Hawks, became very influential. Just later on, it just became like a guiding post in terms of they also interviewed Orson Welles and Hitchcock and all those kind of directors from America. That it's kind of just evidence of the episode we're talking about, of their influence, right?
Yeah.
Not only were they just watching their movies, they were actually trying to get their ideas for their magazine. Treat them like they were a major author. Yeah. Yes, they want to get their ideas and everything. And because in the article that posts the translation of that Kahiri Cinema interview, or at least they posted, not translation, I guess, because it's in English, but they posted it. They posted a quote from the beginning of that of the Howard Hawks book that interview is in, and they basically mentioned that really a lot of Howard Hawks' popularity began when the French New Wave critics at the time, but then later directors, they were the ones that actually began taking Howard Hawks seriously as that author that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
And really, that's just what I appreciate about them a lot. Like, this is overall, like, it makes me think of them, but also makes me think of a lot of these American directors we're talking about, is that authorship part, right? Not seeing the movie
and maybe it's because they were young, just like Orson Welles and Howard Hawks. Like, they were not old whenever they started directing. Howard Hawks is older than Orson Welles, but I mean, Howard Hawks is still not an old man whenever he was directing, like, The Big Sleep and all these movies that they're talking about, like Red
for
River.
movie years especially.
Yeah, for movie, he wasn't an old guy at all. So they weren't. I don't know. Maybe that's why they were more willing to accept them, because they were themselves young and trying to break into a industry that doesn't really like young people that much, it feels like. Like the movie industry definitely caters to the people that have done it, that have shown they can do it,
and also just the more wealthy people too. I mean,
too, for sure, because
it
is crazy that this band of writers just decided to become some of the best, like great directors. It really is crazy that they did that on shoestring budgets.
Yeah, it's crazy, but and also I guess we brought up Italian Neorealism earlier, but I mean, other than the location, do you think there's any other similarities that you can see between Neorealism?
The Depression.
I'd say Neorealism's Depression is more, it's more noticeable than, because I feel like a lot of French New Wave movies, the Depression's, it's more characters all try to hide it, while Neorealism, or the movie, just tries to, it's kind of like a shade, but in Neorealism, it's kind of like it just throws it at your face,
But,
you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Like, it's just more open about it.
Yeah.
But do you think that's because of the style of Italian Neorealism, or more just because of the stories they were telling? Because
I guess,
they were way more direct in their story, like especially when people think of Germany Year Zero or Paisan or something like that, right? Where it's the story itself is just really depressing on its own.
But I guess they could be with the subject matter, because they're more about war, like and the effects of
on
war.
Purpose, right? Because they were literally just coming out of World War II.
Yeah. So that does make sense now,
But to me, in terms of, but yes, that's definitely true. Like compared to a lot of these American movies, that on purpose they were trying to be entertaining to some degree.
Yeah.
No matter, and one of the reasons that we see Howard Hawks in all those different movies that I was just talking about earlier was because on purpose he tried to keep his movies kind of balanced. Like he would never have too many sad scenes in a row. There would be a comedy coming up. or vice versa. There's a lot of comedy. All of a sudden, there'd be a dramatic scene or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of his genius, right? He understood the pacing of a movie and what he was trying to do with it.
He takes a sad situation and makes it less sad.
Yes. But that's the opposite of kind of what I see as Italian Neorealism, where it's not going to try to just play to the audience because that's what the audience would want to see at a certain point, right? It's going to be like, this is the story of a guy getting his bike stolen and he can't get it back and he really needs it for his job and he might not get it back in the end. And that's just the story. You're not going to get a happy movie ending or some great moments in the middle.
You're not going to be like,
if there is a great moment, it'll feel very natural, like it actually was a great moment in their life. It wasn't just because we were watching a movie and there had to be a great moment.
But,
I mean, I guess we kind of just started the Italian Neorealism.
But
so I guess we can go to break, and then we'll just get into the two movies, right?
Yeah, so
we'll be back right after this.
So we're back from the break. So now we will be going into the two movies we picked for today. Starting with The Big Sleep. If you didn't know, it's a 46. Directed by Howard Hawks. It's our movie we picked to just represent the noir genre of the golden age of Hollywood. Because noir is as we talked about, noir is a big influence on the French New Wave. So starting with you, Blake, what are your thoughts on what do you think of the movie?
So I did like it. It's not my favorite noir.
Okay.
Mostly because you literally cannot make sense of what is happening in this movie, especially if you're just watching it for the first time. You're just like, what the hell? Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
It's like that John Krasinski, like the what the hell is going on? It's literally that. But that's also kind of what makes it good, because it's not really like a lot of other film noirs, because it is so crazy. Like, I saw a great review for it on Letterboxd, honestly, where it mentioned that this might be Hawks' greatest screwball comedy. And whenever you look at it like that, I can actually kind of see it, because this is it's such a weird noir. It's such a different noir that it's Howard Hawks' version of a noir. Like, this is what he thinks a noir is. This is what he wants his noir to be. I might not entirely like it because I honestly think it's way too convoluted for its own good, and I think it's just it honestly feels like just a set piece for Humphrey Bogart, for Humphrey Bogart to be just amazing, just to be sexy, But
do you think he was like parodying it, the genre in a way?
I think. I think he might be, honestly. Like, I need to watch it again, but there are a lot of things that Howard Hawks does where he will just make a genre movie his own. Like, he does that with a lot of his movies. That's what Red River is, honestly. Like, that's not a Western you typically see, where John Wayne is like literally the bad guy, kind of. Like,
yes.
He just, I don't know, he just takes.
Okay, that's a good way to frame it, even for this one, because. Like how you would think most Humphrey Bogart movies, Humphrey Bogart is obviously knows every step. He's always one step ahead. In this one, he's like 1 or 2 or 3 steps behind.
Yeah, he's like,
every time. He has like no idea what's going on half the time, like us almost.
Yeah.
But same thing with the Red River John Wayne. You're expecting John Wayne to be the hero.
Yeah, you're expecting one thing and then you get something else.
Yes.
And that's honestly why I like Howard Hawks. That's one of the things I liked about The Big Sleep. I do just think it's a little too just crazy, honestly.
That's what you saying that, especially the screwball comedy part, made me think of. Honestly, it might be more of a movie for people, especially it was made in 1946, so a lot of people going to see this had seen a lot of film noir movies already.
Yeah.
So it's made for that type of audience that is already very aware of the genre and the tropes and all that. Yeah. And so they can kind of see the funny parts of it. It's like, oh, this is not going like how maybe a typical film noir would go.
This isn't how this is supposed to go.
Yeah. But that's why you can enjoy it still. You can still see the film noir aspects of it. And a lot of it, every woman still.
Because that's why I am glad that I rewatched The Maltese Falcon also, because I think that's a vastly superior film noir, maybe a little too harsh, but it is one of my favorite film noirs. Is The Maltese Falcon, and it's honestly a great parallel, or like what's the other opposite way of parallel? Perpendicular? I don't know. But it's like I don't know. It's just a great way to look at it because The Maltese Falcon is what you would typically think of film noir is, with Humphrey Bogart being literally 3 steps ahead of everyone the entire movie. And then you watch The Big Sleep and you're like, Humphrey Bogart's, like you said, 3 steps behind everyone, just following along, not knowing exactly what's happening or what to do. Like he gets guns pointed at him multiple times in The Big Sleep, and he's like, "How everyone's pointing guns at me today?"
Or the scene I really, honestly, it's probably the one scene that'll always stick with me, and from The Big Sleep that I'll remember, is the beginning when he's talking to, is it a general that hires him, or I was just looking this up. Let me see. Yeah, General Sternwood in that mansion, and he's in they're in that greenhouse or something. And the general's like not sweating at all. He's like completely fine sitting down. But he's just
he's like drenched in
sweating
sweat,
by the time it ends. He's like drenched in sweat.
Yeah.
And like it kind of is like almost like just how the rest of the movie's gonna go.
Yeah.
You know, he's gonna get in these situations that like he's obviously not really ready for.
Yeah, he's not prepared for it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not too really like an expert on the noir genre. I mean,
I don't think any of us are experts.
No, I wouldn't say I'm an expert.
But
we've definitely watched at least a few enough.
I'm not really sure if I'm like a huge fan of it because my favorite noir movie that I've seen is The Third Man, and that kind of just defies it in general. Like The Third Man.
And the way you said that is that's because that came out later too. Is that even?
Well, it's 49.
49. Yeah, I think so.
So like, it's weird to think about that, but these are the later film noir movies.
Yeah,
So they're already assuming some audience knows, some is aware of the old film.
And that kind of supports what I was saying about it being a parody because it feels so like I was saying earlier, it felt like the most noir movie I've ever seen.
It does. It does.
Because he gets so like, you can tell it just follows that idea of parodying and like how he's just like keeps on jamming aspects of it in it, and it kind of exhausts you by then. You're like,
it does.
Don't want to watch.
No, because like every 10 minminutes, someone different is shooting someone else that just got introduced, and you're like, who the hell is everyone? Like, I don't even know this person. Like, what?
Watching this time. Initially watching it, because we picked it because we thought it was going to be a film noir movie, a good representative of the film noir genre.
Yeah. It is, technically.
It still is.
Yeah.
But watching it, I thought it was going to be more straightforward film noir.
Yeah.
I'm going to know everything that's happening. I'm watching it more for the hero to be kind of almost a superhero kind of thing. But it's not like that at all. And it is kind of disorienting. Especially, like, it would be like watching a horror movie that's very self-aware of its tropes, of the horror genre.
Yeah.
But you've never watched any of those horror movies it's, parodying.
Yeah.
So you're just like, is this just like a bad horror movie? But I'm sure that happens with a lot of horror movies, though.
Probably like Scary Movie.
Okay, but that's a parody on purpose.
Yes, there are definitely people that went into that not knowing that, though.
If you go into a Scary Movie not knowing that, come on. Come on. Okay, but really, I guess because we were talking about earlier about, I think I mentioned it earlier about Howard Hawks kind of adding all, like he never gets too out of balance, So even if it's in his film noir, he's still gonna have screwball comedy, like you said earlier, But that kind of made me think of, to tie it back to the French New Wave, is even before the French New Wave were doing things like that, where they were being very self-aware of the genre, what they were doing, maybe too self-aware in Godard's case or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes.
Even Hawks was already doing that, with the genres he was using, like westerns with Red River or The Big Sleep, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of just, honestly, what I like most about, besides that opening scene with Humphrey Bogart, is it'll just make me think of another, just Howard Hawks, it's making me respect Howard Hawks way more, honestly. Just,
honestly,
through this last week, watching those movies is because
it puts old Hollywood in a different perspective that you don't usually think of.
Yes, the classic studio Hollywood movie. You never mention you don't really think about the director-controlled Howard Hawks. Really, you think about the studio system and the lights and the makeup and that kind of thing, right?
Was this movie shot in studio? I couldn't even tell.
No, was it shot
probably?
In studio? Probably.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question.
So I was trying to figure that out. I mean, the streets look kind of real, but kind of studio-like. I don't know.
It has to be a studio, honestly.
Yeah, I would guess. But...
No, but what should we go do next? Well, I mean, have you even given your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I did.
I kind of.
Did you give your thoughts?
We kind of did. I mean,
so basically all of us.
we all gave it like the same rating, so I feel like we have similar thoughts on it.
We have similar thoughts on it. I think,
but I think I respect
like
it more than I like it. I guess this is what I want to say though.
Fair.
I do want to say, eventually at some point after I've watched more film noir movies, I do want to come back to this, and I think I would like it.
Yeah, probably.
And maybe more Humphrey Bogart movies too, because it has been a while since I've seen it.
And that is the one more thing I wanted to mention. Actually, was the way that Howard Hawks actually just lights and shoots Humphrey Bogart is very similar, at least to Godard shooting Michelle in Breathless, especially in my opinion. But
yeah. I mean, literally, Michelle is literally Bogart. Like,
yeah.
I mean, come on.
I mean, there's a scene where they recall it.
Yeah.
He just stares at Humphrey Bogart for like 10 seconds.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
But I think we can move to Bicycle Thieves. I think we're all more looking forward to reviewing this one anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Bicycle Thieves.
Why is that?
Wait, why are we reviewing it, you saying?
No, why are all of us more looking to reviewing this one?
Oh, yeah. Well, Bicycle Thieves... First of all, the story is a lot more simple. But,
yes.
I mean, I think it's more, okay, I don't know if this is unpopular with you guys, but it's more important, I feel like, a movie in terms of the history of cinema. And
definitely, yes.
And,
I mean, that's a tricky question, because it depends on always who you're asking.
Yeah.
And what they consider important history. But I see what you're saying. It was definitely more influential.
Yeah,
especially for countries around the world, and even outside of Italy.
Yeah, it had a lot more serious themes in it than it was a lot more serious than The Big Sleep, of course. But I mean, I guess so. Generally, what can you even like put into words like how good it is?
Like how good it is. I mean, I can just say I like it a lot. Yeah. But in terms of it's hard to talk about. This is true with most movies. It's hard to put into words specifically why a movie is good, because a lot of movie is about feeling it more than just putting it into words.
Yeah. The reason I like this one a lot is because it makes you understand and not really judge why this man is looking for his bike as hard as he is and why he eventually does what he does at the end of it. Because it's not telling you, like I know we were talking about this last night, but it's not really telling you what to feel at any point in the movie. It's just kind of showing you what this man is thinking while he's going through this, and it's all the background in the movie and understanding. Like they literally just came out of World War II. Everyone there is looking for a job. Hundreds of people looking for jobs, and this one guy has a bike, and he's like, "Okay, I'm the one with the job," and then he gets his bike stolen, and it's the way that he films it is, it's so. I don't want to say depressing because it's not intentionally depressing. It's just you understand this guy's emotions so well. You empathize a lot with him.
Yes.
Because of the way De Sica films it.
And how alone he is in the world.
So what I would say is, and this is more how a lot of the Italian Neorealist movies were on purpose. It's more like you said. It's not telling you. It is depressing. It's obviously not admitting that it's not depressing or anything. But it's trying as best possible just to record the events as they might happen.
Yeah.
Not for a movie's sake, but just for if this was actually happening, this is what actually happens. Yeah.
Like you can believe. And
there are some moments, right, where the music might try to sway you a little bit. Yeah. Especially
the kid tries to sway you. Something.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes. But it's even those things are try to use honestly, right? Like, people that lose their jobs do have kids. Yeah. Yeah.
But. What? Didn't you say you thought the kid was a nuisance or whatever?
I didn't say nuisance. I said he's like I said sometimes it just seems like he's there to be a sympathetic character, like make you to pull emotions out of you. Like he feels kind of cheap sometimes.
Every character do you think does that in that movie though?
No, I don't. I don't think every character.
Do you think that's the point of the main character? Isn't he supposed to draw emotions out of you? Do you think?
Well, he draws.
I think he's the main character that you're exploring, though. I think that a lot of times, I don't think this movie falls into this trap a lot, but a lot of times, kids are in movies just so they can draw feelings out of you because they want to make you sad. Like that's why a lot of kids. That's why kids are in movies a lot. Like honestly, but that's different from what this one is. Like that's not only why this kid is in here. He actually has character development, but there are certain scenes where I'm like. Like, why does this kid have to watch his dad at the very end? Like, would he actually be there? Like, would he actually be there?
That's where I disagree, kind of. To me, it's not about character development at all. None of these characters develop. It's honestly over the course of a day. The whole movie takes place. Or 2 days, maybe. Yeah, it's not that long.
Is it?
Because he gets his bike stolen and they're searching for the bike, basically.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's not even about any character development. Like, he's honestly might be dumber at the end than he is at the beginning.
The kid or the father?
No, the father.
Yes.
But even the kid, like, it's to me, it's almost the reason why I don't think the kid falls into that trap is because in a lot of ways, I think he's actually he shows more intelligence than the father does, and more understanding of a situation than even the father does, in certain moments. And that's why I don't think he's just there for the emotional part, because I think he's almost there to kind of show a balance with his father, you know. Like, you wouldn't get to see the father slap the kid if the kid wasn't there. But really, the father knows he's slapping the kid because it's kind of his fault. You know, all this stress is happening, and he just takes it out on the kid. But that's also, I mean, that's honestly, that's what happens in a lot of people's lives. You know?
It does. Yeah.
But to me, that's not just to draw out emotions using the kid. It's honestly, it's kind of to show that what the father's stakes are in a lot of ways. You know, the stakes would feel less if it was just the father going out there.
But it's literally his whole life is on the line.
Yes,
basically.
and
I think you get that. I think
you see that through the kid.
But I think you get that without the kid, though. Also, like you would get that. I think you would get that without the kid.
You would, but that's why I'm saying it actually brings out a lot in the adult or the man's character, because the kid shows, like I'm saying, I think he shows a lot of intelligence that the father doesn't even show.
I honestly just think the kid's kind of supposed to be us, like us viewing. Like it's supposed to be like if our father was doing this, like it's supposed to be us, you know, like we're supposed to be viewing our father doing all this stuff, basically. That's fair. Yeah.
In a way, I could see that because that's
at least how I empathize with the father, is because I was viewing him through the son. Like, yes, this man obviously cares and loves for his family a lot, and that's the reason why he's going through this and why he feels hopeless at the end. Why he ends up like having to do trying to do what he does. And another thing that I actually like about it, and I don't know if this ties in, I honestly think that like the hopelessness and depression actually does tie in with French New Wave quite a bit, because I think a lot of the French New Wave characters, at least early French New Wave, like Elevator, the Gallows, and stuff like that, and like Breathless, like those characters are depressed with their situation. They aren't happy, and they might not show it as bleakly as something like this does, but I still think it's definitely an influence on it.
But that is something, I guess this kind of ties to just why I think the kid is very important to the movie. But it ties into the desperation, not through what the director is trying to make. He's not trying to draw desperation out of the characters. It's just because of the situation, you can see the desperation in the characters, just because of the situation alone, right? And for me, like the honestly, watching it this time, it made me think of the scene in the church where he's trying to get the old guy to tell him where the guy that stole his bike is. Remember that?
Yeah.
Super awkward scene.
Yes, not awkward, but desperate. You know, this guy, it's literally this old homeless guy who's trying to get food, and that's why he's in church. And he's so desperate. He's going to, like, bother him in the middle of the service, like, no, you're coming with me.
His desperation there kind of foreshadows the desperation of the final scene.
But the kid being right next to him, just kind of having no control, just being innocent, you know, but at the same time not being embarrassed either, right? Like maybe another kid in a different movie would be like, you know, be really annoying about it and being like more of a kid. Honestly, maybe more like you were saying, if the kid is supposed to be the audience, maybe some audience would be like, audience members would be like, oh, why are you doing this, Dad? You know, like, get out of here, you know, that kind of thing. But the kid's kind of just watching him do it, knowing like,
and he is also, he's not saying that to his dad, but his face is saying
his face is but he has no control, and he knows his dad needs that bike. He also knows that, you know. But in the other scene is obviously one of the famous scenes is with when he actually accuses the guy at his house with all the neighbors and stuff, you know. And just those two scenes makes me think of just the desperation, right? Like he knows he's not going to win this battle with all those guys there, and yet he keeps trying, you know. He's like, no, it's he just feels like he has no other option at that point, you know. He knows it's over if it's not this guy. If this guy won't admit to stealing his bike, he knows it might be over. It's probably over, you know.
And, speaking of the kid, what did you guys think of the scene at the bridge where he thought it was his kid that drowned? Like, what did you think that was, you know, manipulating our emotions, or do you think that was actually?
I liked it.
Do you like that scene?
Yes.
Because that's an interesting scene.
It could, and that's a good manipulation is a good way to put it, because I could see you could see a story like this being handled in a very manipulative way.
Yeah.
But to me, maybe in some, I could see maybe some people saying that it does become too manipulative at points. But to me, it's like it's basically the perfect balance because it's very straightforward in its storytelling.
Yeah.
You know.
Like, see, that's one of the moments I actually didn't think was that manipulative because it shows like that is actually a real emotion a father would have if he just slapped his kid and then he heard like there was a kid drowning in a river like and he did because they separate at that point so obviously he'd be worried about him. Like that's a real emotion. Like I actually believe that.
But then at the same time, it makes you think of just how in that moment he's so desperate, but then when you realize. Then he realizes he thought he lost his kid.
Yeah.
And then he sees his kid. All that swing of emotions makes you just realize, like, oh, maybe it's not so bad. You know, my kid could have just died.
Yeah.
Or my kid could have just committed suicide or tried to.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then he sees him, and that's why I like about this movie, but a lot of Italian Neorealist movies I've seen, or some of them, is they do still give you those magic movie moments. You know, where but it feels more natural in terms of like when he does see his son's on the top step. You know, like kind of clueless, and the camera just looks.
Is it
up.
right after that they go to the restaurant too?
Is it?
And he treats him.
The next scene is. I'm pretty sure it is.
Because he was so scared. He was so scared that he was going to lose his kid or something.
Because he had just slapped him. He had just slapped him. That scene happens.
Yeah.
And then they go to the and the restaurant's a great scene.
Oh
too.
man,
it's a great scene.
Because so I guess I kind of want to mention. I mentioned him last week, but Andre Bazin, one of the influential critics in the French New Wave, and kind of before that too. He wrote an essay on the bicycle thieves, and something he mentioned was because Blake said earlier about when the kid when the bridge jumping scene. Blake mentioned how that kind of just feels like something that would happen, right?
Yeah.
And Bazin mentioned in the essay how this movie feels like it doesn't have the normal dramatic logic of a movie would have, right? Like, oh, this happened, so this happened.
Yeah.
And maybe. And that could be in terms of just emotions, right? Like, so you were just sad for these two scenes, so you have to have a happy scene here, or like, think of a typical Marvel movie where it's, you know, the act structure of like the way your emotions go. It's like the bad guy, he wins at the beginning and then loses at the end, that kind of thing, right? Yeah. This movie doesn't feel like that at all. It kind of just feels like random moments that would happen while some guy was trying to find his bike.
Yeah.
And then through that, you feel all the emotions, deeper emotions that you're supposed to feel through a movie.
Yeah.
And to me, the restaurant scene is very good at that, because what I always am going to think of is the kid just always looking back at the other kid eating. And then at one point, his father says, "I'd have to make like $1 million a year or something, just to eat like that." And then the kid like slowly puts down his food.
Yeah.
It's like he almost feels guilty, and he's like, "No, just eat." And then he starts eating again. Yeah. But see, that's just a great moment because you can see that happening, right? No, like barely any words. You know, it doesn't have to overemphasize it, but it's still a really brutal moment, honestly.
And it honestly adds to the kid's character as well, because, I mean, it shows that he's very sympathetic to the situation. He's not just a kid who thinks, you know...
But that's what I'm trying to say, right? He's very understanding. Like, a normal kid would be like, why can't I eat like that, you know? Like, or, you know, like, why don't you make $1 million a year?
Work harder, Dad.
Well, to start tying this into the French New Wave, I feel like the location shooting is a big one, but also, just like a lot of French New Wave movies, he kind of makes De Sica makes Rome basically a character in this one, because you know that's where they're like spending time in the streets of Rome. And,
that's a good point. Yes.
Is there any
the city
other
feels like a important aspect, right?
Yeah.
This one feels like more.
The city feels alive.
Yeah.
But in this one, it feels more desperate, right? Because this is kind of post-war, 4 years after the war. You know, obviously the job market is very slim, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But. And a great example for that, for me, when you mentioned that, I just reminded me, was the ending scene right before he decides to steal that bike.
Yeah.
Is when he's looking at all the groups of bikes, because everyone's at work, and so all those bikes are there. And then while he's thinking about it, everyone comes out, work gets out, and you see that huge crowd of people start walking, right?
Yeah.
And that just made me think of Rome at the time, right? Like, he's kind of jealous of the people that did have those jobs that were getting to leave. But... You really feel it, right?
Well, no, and that's another thing that I actually just liked about the movie in general, because after he gets his bike stolen, there are so many scenes where it's just him and his son walking, and there are literally, like, 10s and 20s of bikes driving around them, and just like kind of like rubbing it in his face. It seems like there are so many scenes where they're just walking around. There are just bikes going all around them,
like basically telling him you're not gonna find
yeah,
it. Like,
exactly.
Come on now.
Like it's almost impossible to find. The cop literally tells him it, and it is true. Like it's basically impossible to find something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like
especially in a city of like Rome, like.
So I know you mentioned the French New Wave influences, but we kind of need to talk about the ending of Bicycle Thieves.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Because that ties into what we talked about. That me and Blake talked about this last night. Is it is kind of impossible unless he's stealing the bike at the very end, because of course this guy, he has bad luck. Like
yes.
But that's the thing, because he also does it at a really dumb time.
Yeah.
While he's the movie kind of, in my opinion, it kind of low key mentions this without ever, it's not going to tell you ever. But it's just another example of it could either represent his hesitation, or his kind of his intelligence of not being very smart in terms of when he finally decides to steal the bike is after the crowd is already out there.
But it just shows how desperate he was at that point.
Oh, he was desperate. But the whole time he's thinking everyone is still at work, right?
Yeah.
He could have done it then, but his son is with him. He tries to send his son off first on the streetcar to make sure he doesn't see him. But by the time he does do it, it's just too late. He gets caught. Because he tries to ride through a crowd of people while everyone's yelling thief.
Yes. And then the scene where his son looks at him.
Yeah,
dude,
his son,
oh my god.
that's very...
See, that's the one where I'm like, okay, just like that one's the one where I'm like, okay, that's a little too sentimental.
He sees his father as a different man that he thought he was. He's basically saying, he's seeing a new side of his father he's never seen before, and I feel like there's
but we have seen that side of his father before already. He got slapped by his father.
The thief of his father, though, like as a thief, as a criminal, basically is what he's resorted to. That's what he sees now. And it's foreign to him, and I think his face, his like emotions with his face, encapsulate that.
And the fact that you said see him as a new person, I have to mention another part of the Andre Bazin essay that I read about Bicycle Thieves, is he mentions why he loves the very ending so much. When they finally decide when they hold hands after they're both crying, they just go into the crowd. Great ending, because it kind of just. It makes you realize that he's just another one of the crowd at the end of the day. There were way more people like him having these kind of situations. Yeah.
Also, tribute to Chaplin too. I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in that moment, even though it's kind of almost a fall. Yes. Okay. Yeah. The Chaplin thing. I just remember that. I just mentioned that because you mentioned us before we started that De Sica was.
Yeah. He's Chaplin's favorite filmmaker. Yeah.
But I got distracted. But with that ending, when they hold hands, Bazin sees it as kind of, instead of the father-son relationship turning more into an equals relationship, where they kind of realize where they are at that moment, and that's why he liked it so much, because it was like he calls it one of the greatest marks that can happen in a father-son relationship, where they become more equals, instead of just that father-son. And it is a depressing moment where it happens, but it's kind of true at the same time, right? Like. The fact that his son is willing to stand by him even at his father's obviously lowest moment, getting caught trying to steal a bike, and his son watches it happen. And the fact that he got shown mercy too, which is kind of interesting. But
it's only because the kid was there. It's only because the kid was there.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Honestly, the kid saves him. Yeah.
Maybe he was.
Damn, Blake. So maybe you wanted him arrested. That's why you hate the kid.
That's why I hate the kid.
He was a thief. He should be in prison right now.
No, I did. The thing that I like to parallel with the ending is I like to parallel him stealing a bike with the guy that stole his bike at the very beginning, because it literally almost happens kind of at the same time. Like maybe it's not as much of a rush hour whenever his bike gets stolen, but there are so many people around him on the streets, and he's yelling thief, and literally no one helps him except for like a cab driver. And then whenever he steals the bike, literally 50 people, it seems like, are running after him. And
but you could argue that other guy was smarter though when he stole it, because that guy goes through a tunnel.
Yeah.
No, he goes through a tunnel. He definitely stole it at a better spot. But it still took him a long time to get that tunnel. People could have helped. People could have definitely helped the guy out,
Honestly, the scene where he steals where his bike gets stolen. Honestly, it might be my favorite one in the movie, because I just love the way he showcases him just like running, and then all of a sudden he can't find him. It's such a great
especially when
he gets turned around,
that guy and the guy turns around. It's like, oh, it's not him. Oh.
Yeah. No, he gets turned around the tunnel. Like that's why
Yes,
that's
yes.
why I like it a lot. Yeah,
No, it's a
because
great
then it's
scene.
just like bikes are going everywhere in the tunnel. And you're like, okay, well.
No, because you could see in a different movie where maybe the happy ending would be him going away free on that bike, you know, and it would feel kind of weird.
It would feel weird,
but
yeah,
still, you could see him like getting away, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, and you would understand it. But the fact that nope, it's just like another scene where he gets caught,
or he just magically
it's
finds
bad
his bike
luck.
at the end, you know.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be more likely. Yeah, he finds his bike at the end and he steals it back, you know, that kind of thing.
Superhero. No. But
So, do we have any more to add?
score's great. I mean, that's a good
score's
one.
great. Honestly, I guess we kind of use the French New Wave more to just talk about these movies in general.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I don't mind it. I mean, they would have liked that as well.
Yeah, true. I mean, Bicycle Thieves is one of the greatest, like, objectively one of the greatest movies ever made.
And influential.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
On different, you kind of mentioned earlier about the street level, just the just shooting on the streets kind of attitude that you definitely feel. But in terms of influence, you could see how that would influence a lot of people in different countries that might watch a studio Hollywood movie and be like,
we can't have
how can we do that?
Yeah.
But you see just some guy shooting on the streets with non-actors.
True,
Which is another
that's
huge
very
part,
true.
right? Non-actors.
Yeah, and like, did you guys know like the main actor in Bicycle Thieves, basically he couldn't find any work after that, and like he was in poverty, and then he tried to get a job at a factory because he was originally a factory worker, and they just denied him because they thought he was like famous and like rich.
Wow.
Because he started the movie, and basically he died alone, basically, pretty much. Like,
that's really depressing.
That is very depressing, just like the movie.
And then what's crazy is the kid, I believe, is still alive.
Really?
Yeah.
That would make sense. He'd be really. I mean, he'd be probably about my grandparents' age, actually, almost 80.
Yeah.
In his 80s, probably.
And I don't know if he ended up being a very famous actor, but yeah, I just know it's kind of depressing on how the main actor basically.
No, I do like how the French New Wave. I do think that they pair someone like Howard Hawks and something like Italian Neorealism a lot, though.
Yeah.
Because they don't make it so depressing and so real, like Neorealism do. Yeah. They mask it with something like a Howard Hawks does, with some comedy. Like, you know, they do mask that stuff really well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just kind of like that.
The French New Wave aspect.
Yeah, well, how they're just like they merge a lot of different
yes.
ideas that they bring all these different auteurs kind of together.
Yes. Like kind of what I was saying earlier at the beginning, like they realize the power of these different styles, but they also realized it could be used in all sorts of contexts, you know, to tell. And this is why they emphasize the authorship part, right? Because they realize like. Maybe like you compared it to a pen, right?
Yeah.
How the camera you can edit.
Actually,
the way,
that was a kind of quote from a French magazine. I forgot what his name is.
The Ostruk, Alexandre.
It might have been him. I just know it was from. I read it somewhere. It was from a French magazine where he basically explained it as a director directs with his camera as a writer.
The camera stylo, the pen. Yes,
yeah,
the
and like
pen.
it was a manifesto and like how. As a writer would write with his pen, basically.
Yes,
he uses
same
camera.
Thing. But they realized, and this is why they valued the author so much, right? Because it wasn't just about the author making choices; it was about being able to see his personality in the movie or her personality in the movie, right? Even more than just saying, "Oh, this movie was good because you know it had the perfect pacing or the perfect editing or the perfect whatever catchwords people use to describe a good movie." It was more like, I like this movie because I could tell Howard Hawks made it.
Yeah.
You know, and he was using all these styles like comedy or horror. I'm not horror, but comedy or westerns.
Yeah. And honestly, it just makes cinema more interesting in general.
It does.
Yeah.
It makes it like they realize it made it more of an art, right?
Yeah, for
the
sure.
kind of personal aspect of it. You know, the human aspect of it.
Yeah.
More than just saying the. When people try to talk about movies more objectively, whatever that means, you know, like they try to say for a fact these are the greatest movies of all time, things like that. Where it's like, you might like this lesser version. You might like you might like a lesser movie from a director just because you see his personality more in it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I know for you, like I because one of the first directors that comes to my mind is John Carpenter, just for that.
Oh, John Carpenter.
You know.
Amazing.
But like.
What are you talking about? He only makes bangers.
No, he does. But the fact that even as lesser movies, you can see always his personality, the John Carpenter of it, you know.
Yeah.
But any last words?
Wrap this up.
What are we talking about next week?
So next week we are going to be discussing the Kahiri Cinema group in general. We're picking 2 movies. Was it The Green Ray and Céline and Julie Go Boating?
Yeah, so
Rohmer and Rivette.
Yeah.
Yes.
We didn't want to pick Godard and Truffaut.
Well, I mean, at the beginning of the episode, we can talk about kind of what we think of all of them.
Yes.
Those main writers or those main directors in that group. But then at the end, we'll talk about The Green Ray and Céline and Julie Go Boating.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun. I mean,
it will be
Céline and Julie Go Boating is like over 3 hours.
3.5.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, but that'll be good. It'll
be fun.
Hopefully, and it sounds really interesting. The synopsis and stuff.
No, it does. So, until then.